week 11 of the fantasy football season, and his running back starts to sit every matchup this week. The first matchup, Thursday Night Football, Tennessee Titans at the Green Bay Packers. So Derrick Henry, I got him as a start this week. I know it was an off game for him, but this week here at Green Bay, I think he gets back on track for this Tennessee Titan team. And we saw the Dallas Cowboys go over 100 yards rushing the football. So I think Henry in this one gets back on track this week, has a big fantasy game, and obviously he's a starter each and every week. Now to the Packers, Aaron Jones, the last couple games, he's getting it going. And this Packer team, they're really starting to solidify the run over here with Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, a big game last week versus the Dallas Cowboys, and this week here versus a pretty solid Tennessee Titan defense, I'm going to give him a start once again. A.J. Dillon, I'm going to put him on the bench this week and sit him. He hasn't really done much this season, only a couple ball games with double-digit fantasy points. And right now, Aaron Jones looks like the better running back, and Dillon more change of pace and shorter yard guy. But right now, he don't really have fantasy value. Philadelphia Eagles at the Indianapolis Colts, Miles Sanders, it was a down game for him on Monday Night Football in Week 10 versus the Commanders, and it wasn't his fault. They didn't just give him a lot of carries, and this is the problem with Sanders at times, where this Eagle team gets too pass happy, or they use Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell a decent amount of times as well. But this week here, I think they're going to solidify the run a little more as this Eagle team. We saw him do it in the second half of the ball game, where Sanders looked pretty good, but obviously his final output wasn't great, with only 6 fantasy points. And now Jonathan Taylor, finally a big ball game, going over 100 yards and finding the end zone. And maybe he's finally 100% healthy. Maybe this Colt team's got new life now with Jeff Saturday as the head coach. And this offense opening up after Frank Reich, for whatever reason, benched Matt Ryan, thinking Sam Elger was going to give this team the best chance. But Jonathan Taylor, we know he's been a bust so far as the first pick overall. But last week was a telling sign that maybe he could get back on track and get things going. So he's a start this week. Los Angeles Rams at the New Orleans Saints. And right here, this Ram team, there's really no one to start on this team. Only in the deepest of leagues. Their offensive line's banged up. The best receivers out in Cooper Kupp. And their running backs haven't done much. So Darrell Henderson as maybe a flex option, or in the deepest of leagues, a number 2 running back, you could have faith in him. But this week here, him and Kyren Williams, I could see going in for a 50-50 split. I didn't even bother to put Cam Akers on the list because he really hasn't done anything this season here. And this Ram team wants to move on from him. They tried trading him at the deadline, but no one bid. And now to the New Orleans Saints side of things, Kamara, the last couple games, he really hasn't done much. But he's a guy you just got to roll with no matter what, and you start him. And he's the heart of this offense, and especially with Michael Thomas out for the season, I think we're going to see him more catching the football and in space for making more plays. And if Jameis Winston comes back, it could even help Kamara more than Andy Dalton this week. Now to the Chicago Bears at the Atlanta Falcons. So David Montgomery, he's going to be the man totally now over there, with Khalil Herbert going on IR for 4 weeks with a hip injury. So right here, Montgomery, he hasn't been good over the last 3-4 weeks of the season here is David Montgomery. But now with a good matchup with the Atlanta Falcons and getting a full workload once again here, he's a guy I'm going to put in the starting lineup with the bye weeks, and just on volume alone, he's a number 2 flex option this week. Now to the Atlanta Falcons, Cordell Patterson came back a couple weeks ago, looked good. And then on Thursday Night Football versus the Panthers, he didn't do anything in that ball game and only had 3 fantasy points. So he's a borderline option at best for me. I think it's going to be him and Tyler Algier pretty much splitting in the backfield. And Algier, he didn't do much as well in that ball game. So he's a borderline option for me as well as Algier. Now the next ball game, Washington Commanders at the Houston Texans. Antonio Gibson, he's looked good over the last few weeks since Taylor Heineke has been inserted into the starting lineup. So this week here, once again, as a number 2 running back flex option, he's a good play, in my opinion, is Antonio Gibson. He caught a touchdown a couple games ago, and he's doing a lot of receiving work out of the backfield, which is a good thing. Brian Robinson Jr. finally had a good ball game versus a tough Philadelphia Eagle front, where they were physical in that game as the Commanders. Time of possession, they really dominated. And Brian Robinson, he was a guy that grinded it out and was a mainstay for that time of possession for this Washington Commander team. So this week here, in a pretty decent matchup at the Houston Texans, I could see them go into this game plan once again, run the football heavy, work off of play action, get it down the field to McLaren. And I like both these Commander running backs this week. Now to the Houston Texans side of things, Dameon Pierce, one of the only bright spots on this Texans offense this season. He's pretty much a locked-in number 2 running back each and every week. He's matchup proof for the most part as well. and he's obviously a start. New York Jets at the New England Patriots. And Michael Carter, he's been pretty solid filling in for Breece Hall, who's unfortunately out for the season, obviously, with a torn ACL. So Michael Carter, he's going to get a workload once again. Him and Robinson, probably almost a 50-50 split like we saw in the Jets ball game in Week 9 versus the Buffalo Bills. So right here, Carter, I think he's good for 10, 15 fantasy points, even in a tough matchup at the New England Patriots, and I got him as a starter. Now to James Robinson. This season, it's just been a weird year for him. He got off to a hot start for the Jaguars. Then 5, 6, 7 weeks, he didn't do anything. Then traded to the Jets. First couple weeks, we didn't see much. And then he had 13 fantasy points a few weeks ago. So right here, he's a borderline option for me is James Robinson. I still can't trust him 100%. I think Michael Carter all around's a better running back than J-Rob. And this season, he's been inconsistent, so I got him borderline. Now to the Patriots from Ramondre Stevenson. He's got potential to be a top 10 running back the remainder of the season, as long as he's getting a full workload, because he can do it all as well. He's a good receiver out of the backfield, running between the tackles, a physical quarterback, and even a physical running back, and even a guy who could pick up the blocks and blitzes as well. So right here, I hope the Patriots, they just go to Stevenson a lot in this game. And pretty much Damian Harris is a change of pace guy, and I can't trust Harris. He's been banged up with a hamstring injury on and off. And like I said, Stevenson's been a more dominant running back. And a guy the Patriots, I know, don't like going to one running back only, that they should really just have is the main guy with Harris change of pace. Now to the Lions at the New York Giants. I like all the running backs in this game. Jamal Williams, he's been a goal line monster this season. Seems like he scores a touchdown pretty much each and every game. 10 touchdowns on the season for Jamal. And this Lion team, they got a pretty decent offense with Amon St. Brown, Jamal Williams, and Swift. And DeAndre Swift, we know he's not 100%. We know this is pretty much a 50-50, 60-40 split over here in Detroit, with Swift being that playmaker and Jamal Williams being that physical back and early downs back and goal line guy, obviously. But right here in a decent matchup versus the New York Giants, if the Lions want a chance to win this ball game, I think they got to establish the run and get Swift in spaces. So this week I got him as a start once again. And now to the Giants, Saquon Barkley, he's been a top running back this season, and last week going over 150 yards on the ground, and he's a no doubt about no-brainer start once again. Now to the Carolina Panthers at the Baltimore Ravens. So Deonta Foreman, ever since the Christian McCaffrey deal, he's been the man over there, and he's taken the running back position by the horns and ran away with it, is Deonta Foreman. We thought Chuba Hubbard was getting a lot of work. He was banged up for a couple games, and Foreman now, he's had great fantasy games with at least 15 or more fantasy points in 3 out of the 4 bowl games since he's had the expanded role with Christian McCaffrey out. So this week, even in a tougher matchup at Baltimore where the game script might not go his way, he's the number 2 running back this week, and I got him obviously as a start here is Deonta Foreman. Chuba Hubbard, we didn't see much out of him in last week's ball game versus the Falcons. You got to see more out of him, but like I said, Foreman's been the dominant back, so Hubbard is a sit this week. And now to the Ravens side of things, Kenyon Drake, he's looked great the last few weeks here, so I got him as a start. He's going to get touches on third down at least as Drake, and I think some early down work as well. He's had a couple decent ball games at the New York Giants a few weeks ago, and then before the bye week at the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football, it was a great game for Drake. So right here, I think we could see a 50-50 split with Drake and Gus Edwards. And Edwards, he should be back off the hamstring injury. We know he's a physical running back. We know he's not going to catch the ball out of the backfield, but he's a guy that could get a couple goal line stompers as well. But this week, I got Gus the Bus as a borderline option because we got to see how that hamstring is before I'm going to throw him into the starting lineup full throttle. But he was definitely a guy I had, obviously, as a waiver wire ad this week. Now to the Browns at the Bills. Nick Chubb, top running back this season, 1, 2, 3 guy, whatever the case may be. He's matchup proof. He always has that big run, it seems. And he's one of the best running backs already in pro football in his 3rd season in the league. So right here, he's a star. Kareem Hunt this season, he really hasn't done much for this Cleveland Brown team. He's been more of a change of pace guy and not as involved as he was last season. So this week here, Kareem Hunt's a sit for me. Down to the Bills side of things, Devin Singletary's still the man over there in Buffalo. I know they traded for Nyheim Hines. I know James Cook they drafted in the 3rd round this season in the NFL draft. But Devin Singletary does it all, can catch the ball out of the backfield. We saw him get 2 goal line touchdowns last week, which is big. And this week here in a pretty solid matchup, I got him as a start. Now to Nyheim Hines. They've traded for him a couple weeks ago, but he really hasn't seen the field or done much for this Buffalo Bill team. And right now, there's no way I could trust him. And I have him as a sit this week. Now to the Las Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos. Josh Jacobs, he's pretty much a guy that's locked in as a low-end number 1 running back. And definitely number 2 guy each and every week for your fantasy lineup. And no matter the matchup, I'm throwing him out there is Josh Jacobs. No doubt about it. He's not going to have a great game sometimes, but he's a guy good for 15, 20 fantasy points almost weekly. Now to the Broncos. It's just been a mess over there in the backfield. But Latavius Murray, he's locked in as the short yardage and goal line guy this week here. And I think he could be a borderline option. And Melvin Gordon and Murray pretty much split in 60-40, 50-50 carries, with Gordon being more the pass catcher out of the backfield and change of pace guy, it seems like. And now to Chase Edmonds, they traded for him in the Bradley Chubb deal as a throw when he was in the deal. And he didn't really see the field with Chase Edmonds in that ball game versus the Tennessee Titans in Week 10. So this week, Edmonds is a sit for me. Now for the Cincinnati Bengals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joe Mixon coming off that 5-touchdown game before the bye week versus the Carolina Panthers. He's a guy that it wasn't a great season for him, but now obviously he ramped it up and had that monster game as Joe Mixon, and you got to put him in the starting lineup, especially where he could come out of nowhere and put up a game like that. Now to the Steelers, Najee Harris, 20 carries, 99 yards in their latest ball game versus the Saints. And right here, Harris, I know he's been a bust as a first-round pick, but he's been putting up solid number 2 running back numbers over the last few weeks. I know he's banged up a little bit of a knee injury, but if he plays, he's going to be a star for me. And Jaylen Warren, all of a sudden, he's getting more work in this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. And he's been an explosive running back, 6 yards per touch almost this season, catching the ball out of the backfield. He's the receiving back, no doubt about it, and third down guy. Harris, he's just been the physical running back in between the tackles. And if Harris does miss this game, Jaylen Warren's a guy with top 15, top 20 potential. But right now, if it stays, he's a borderline option if Harris plays this week. Now to the Dallas Cowboys at the Minnesota Vikings. So Ezekiel, we know he's banged up with the knee injury, and we don't know when he's going to come back. But if he does play in this game, he's going to be a star for me. Him and Tony Pollard probably going to split in this game. We know Elliott's going to get the short yardage and goal line. And we know he's still a physical back that can make a few plays here for this Cowboy team. And a Dak Prescott favorites. And Tony Pollard, the 2 games he started over the last few weeks, he's had monster fantasy games. A few weeks ago, before the Cowboys bye, 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards versus the Bears. And then in Week 10 versus the Green Bay Packers, another great fantasy performance of Tony Pollard. He's a running back you got to start each and every week, a split or not. He's going to put up numbers. Now to the Viking side of things, Dalvin Cook the last 3-4 weeks, he's been a great running back for this Minnesota Viking team. And this whole field's been opened up even more with the TJ Hawkinson trade. So right here, Dalvin Cook, we drafted him as a first-rounder. He's putting up the numbers, and he's a start this week. Now to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Los Angeles Chargers. Jerick McKinnon, he's been a solid option out of the backfield catching the football. And we know this Chief team loves throwing the football. So right here this week, I think McKinnon could go for 8 to 10 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And I got him as a borderline option. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's a guy I mentioned over the last 2 weeks here to drop off your roster. And right now, it's pretty much Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon is the running backs over there in Kansas City. Last ball game, we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire not even get a carry and only 2 targets and a goose egg for fantasy owners. His workload's gone down. Early in the season, I said he was a touchdown-dependent running back, and right now he's not doing anything. Pacheco last week, the biggest workload of a short NFL career in his rookie year. 16 carries, 82 yards, and a fumble loss. So right here, it looks like he's going to be the in-between the tackles and first and second down and goal line back. Here's Pacheco with Jerick McKinnon coming in on third down and passing situations. So right here this week here, I think I got to see a little bit more out of Pacheco before I'm going to put him in my starting lineup. So this week, one more week, I'm going to sit him. And if he breaks out, at least he's on your bench, because right now he's still available in a decent amount of fantasy leagues. Now to the Chargers, Austin Eckler, he's been a great running back this season once again. Last year was his breakout year, and the last few games, 9 touchdowns in the last 4 games here for Austin Eckler. So he's a start once again in a big division matchup. Now to the San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. Christian McCaffrey, what am I going to say? He's been a top running back this season. Health has always been an issue with him, but as long as he's healthy, he's a running back you start each and every week. And I know reports have come out that him and Mitchell might split in the backfield, and we just did see that in that Week 10 ball game on Sunday Night Football versus the Los Angeles Chargers. So Mitchell had 18 carries in that one, but this week here, if this is a close ball game, you're going to see Christian McCaffrey a lot. I just can't trust Mitchell. He's been injury prone. He's been delicate throughout his career, even though when he does play, he is a solid running back. But I just don't buy him and McCaffrey are going to obviously split after the Niners trading a lot of draft capital to get McCaffrey on the team. And James Conner, I'm going to start this week. They cut Eno Benjamin. He went to the Houston Texans, and now the rookie Ingram, the backup over there. So as long as Conner's healthy and ready to go, he's a guy getting 90+% of the snaps, and as a start on volume alone is a number 2 running back, even in a tough matchup. So that's running back starts to sit every matchup this week in Week 11 of the fantasy football season.